Have you ever had that feeling, like you're living in two completely different worlds at the exact same time? One where things are getting unbelievably good, and another where they feel terrifyingly bad. Well, if you feel that way, you're not wrong. Today, we're going to get right into the heart of that paradox, the defining contradiction of our modern world. It all comes back to this one famous line from Charles Dickens. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. He wrote that over 150 years ago, but somehow it's become the perfect, unofficial slogan for our life right now, in the 21st century. So that's the big question, isn't it? Why? Why does a line from a Victorian novel feel like it was written for us this morning as we scrolled through our phones? What is it about this particular moment in history that makes that contradiction feel so sharp, so personal? All right, let's get into it. The answer isn't just that, some things are good and other things are bad. That's always been true. What's happening now is that the extremes themselves are being pulled further and further apart. We're calling it the Great Widening.
See, this is the core idea right here. The whole range, the amplitude of human experience has just stretched out. The potential for good things is soaring to heights we've never seen before, while the potential for disaster, well, that's plunging to terrifying new depths. And that whiplash you feel bouncing between those two realities, that's what we're all living with every single day.
I mean, just look at technology. On the one hand, we've got AI helping us discover new medicines, biotech that can literally edit our genes, and clean energy that's becoming cheaper than fossil fuels. It's incredible. But, and it's a huge but, that exact same technology is the perfect tool for spreading misinformation, it's threatening people's jobs, and it's being used as a weapon for cyber warfare. Or think about this one, our well-being versus the planet's. We have made unbelievable progress. Extreme poverty has dropped like a rock, and global living standards are higher than they've ever been. And yet, the very systems that gave us all that prosperity are the same ones driving climate change and causing this absolutely catastrophic loss of biodiversity. We are literally living inside a contradiction. And then there's connectivity, right? We are so hyper-connected. We can talk to anybody on the planet instantly. It gives a platform to voices that were silenced for centuries. In theory, that's a revolution. But in practice, well, the algorithms that run these platforms, they feed on outrage. They push us into our little tribes, and honestly, they can make us feel more lonely and isolated than ever before. It is the exact same story with wealth. The global economy is a wealth creation machine like nothing we've ever seen. But at the exact same moment, that wealth is getting sucked up to the very top at a historic rate, which leaves so many people feeling totally insecure as inequality just skyrockets. It's like abundance and anxiety are growing from the very same soil. And this really is the ultimate contrast. Our pure potential versus our risk. We are, and this is not an exaggeration, on the verge of curing genetic diseases and maybe even becoming a multiplanetary species. It's mind-blowing. Yet, for the first time ever, we're facing multiple simultaneous threats, nuclear, AI, biological, that could literally end civilization as we know it. So when you put it all together, you realize we're living in what you could call the hinge of history. It's this unique moment where the gap between our best possible future and our worst possible future has never, ever been wider. We are the very first generation to see global progress and global crisis unfold live on our screens, feeling totally responsible for it all and completely powerless at the same time. So let's get real for a second. How does all this constant whiplash actually feel? Because this isn't just some abstract concept. No, it's having a real impact on us, on our minds, and on the very systems we all depend on. The problem really just boils down to this, the great mismatch. Think about it. Our hardware, our actual nervous systems, were designed over thousands of years for life in a small village, dealing with, local, slow-moving problems. But our reality today? It's a constant 24/7 fire hose of global information, non-stop crisis alerts, and planet-scale turbulence. And the result of that mismatch? Well, it's that feeling so many of us have every single day. And it is not just you. It's that chronic stress from always being on alert. It's that emotional whiplash, jumping from hope to dread and back again. It's decision fatigue from just too much information. It's this low-level feeling of threat all the time. It's a kind of cultural exhaustion. But here is the most important thing to take away from this part. Feeling overwhelmed right now is not a personal failing. It is not a sign that you are weak. It's a completely rational signal that your brain is sending, telling you that our old ways of coping, our old systems, just aren't a match for the world we've built. Okay, so if the world feels like a really turbulent ride, what on earth can we do about it? Well, the very first step is to figure out where our seatbelts are. We have to identify those hidden systems that actually give us some stability in this high-speed world.
Yeah, let's just stick with that metaphor for a minute. If modern civilization is like an airplane that's speeding up, shaking all over, and sometimes feels like it might be on fire, what are the things that actually keep us from getting thrown around the cabin?
Well, the good news is we do have them, and they exist on 4 different levels. So on a personal level, it can be something as simple as just focusing on your breathing to calm your nervous system, or relying on your small group of trusted friends, your micro-community. Socially, it's things like shared norms and the ability to think critically. Institutionally, it's the big stuff we take for granted, like the rule of law or public infrastructure. And then at the deepest level, it's just our incredible built-in human adaptability. But, maybe the ultimate seatbelt of all is this idea right here, distributed resilience. See, humanity's real strength has never been finding one perfect system. It's been having thousands of different cultures and different experiments and different approaches all running at the same time. It's redundancy. When one part breaks, another one steps up. And all of this leads us to the final and maybe the most important question of all. If we're all just passengers on this crazy ride, then who is actually flying the plane? Who's in control? No, seriously, stop and think about it for a second. Who is at the controls of this huge, complicated machine? Is it a politician? A tech billionaire? Is it anyone? The answer, as you can probably guess, is complicated. The truth is, there's no single pilot. The plane is being flown by a whole mix of forces. You've got the autopilot, these huge systems like the global economy or the pace of technology that just have their own momentum. You've got the cockpit crew, our leaders and institutions who have some control but not total control. You've got the mechanics, all the essential workers who actually keep the engines from falling off. You've got the passengers, that's all of us, and our collective choices subtly steer the plane. And then, of course, you've got the turbulence, those massive forces like the climate or a pandemic that nobody controls. So this is the really big idea. It's this unsettling but also kind of liberating truth. Everyone and no one is flying the plane. We are all just part of this massive, self-organizing system that doesn't have a single central brain. Which brings us to one final, crucial thought. The cockpit is empty. There is no single captain coming to save the day. And yet, at the same time, the cockpit is full. It's full of all of us. Our actions, our choices, our resilience. That is what's steering this thing. We aren't just passengers along for the ride. We are all co-pilots. The only question is, where do we choose to fly?
Right now, like in the exact same afternoon, human beings are curing genetic blindness with CRISPR technology while, simultaneously retreating into this ideological tribalism that honestly resembles the Dark Ages. Okay, let's unpack this.
It's just the ultimate paradox,
Okay.
and it's exactly why that old Charles Dickens line, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times,
Oh, right.
why it hits with such physical force today. I mean, we aren't just reading about extreme upward and downward trajectories in a history book anymore.
No, we're living them.
Exactly. Concurrently and on a completely global scale.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We're looking at a super fascinating document today called A Tale of Two Realities. And the mission here is to map out exactly why modern life feels like it's achieving these utopian heights and apocalyptic lows all at once.
Right.
And crucially, we want to discover how you, the listener, can navigate this turbulent era without your nervous system just like completely short-circuiting.
Because if you are feeling overwhelmed right now, I just want to say, it isn't a glitch in your psychology.
Right, it's not just you.
No, it is a highly rational, biologically appropriate response to the actual data your brain is receiving.
Okay, so to actually understand why we feel this way, we have to look at the sheer amplitude of the world right now, like map out the extremes of this paradox.
Right, we have to trace the domino effect of how these extremes collide across really 5 distinct dimensions.
And it really starts with technology, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The explosive capability we have right now is just staggering.
Yeah, like AI predicting protein folds to cure previously fatal diseases.
Or solar energy becoming so cheap that it's, rapidly outcompeting coal on a global scale.
But then you have the flip side. you can't decouple that capability from the massive risk it generates.
Right. The exact same digital infrastructure that allows a breakthrough in medical research to be shared globally in seconds
Yeah.
is literally the exact same infrastructure that scales misinformation and surveillance.
Wow. Yeah. We've basically built tools so powerful they fundamentally outpace our ability to regulate them.
Which drives the second massive shift, right? Global wealth and living standards versus ecological collapse.
Right. Because over the last 40 years, extreme poverty has just plummeted.
Child mortality is a fraction of what it used to be.
But, and here is the brutal catch, the industrial engines pulling billions of people out of poverty are the exact same engines destabilizing the climate.
And driving mass extinction. We're essentially buying human well-being on credit.
Right.
And we're using the Earth's biosphere as collateral.
That's such a wild way to think about it. The paradox is that human health is peaking strictly because of systems that make the planet less habitable.
Exactly. And that ecological toll, combined with the sheer velocity of wealth creation, leads us straight into the third dimension, a profound economic contradiction.
Because global GDP is higher than it has ever been in human history.
But we are seeing historic, staggering concentrations of wealth.
Yeah, you have these massive urban centers where innovation and capital are completely off the charts, but like a median wage worker can't even afford to rent a one-bedroom apartment.
Right? Economic mobility stalls out.
Which leaves a massive portion of the population feeling deeply insecure. And, when people feel economically insecure, they look for somewhere to put that anxiety.
Which brings us to the fourth dimension, the fragmentation of our society.
The connection versus fragmentation paradox.
Right. We have unprecedented connection. You can instantly video chat with someone in Tokyo from a coffee shop in London.
Marginalized communities can find each other across continents, which is beautiful.
It is. But the architecture of that connection isn't neutral.
No, it's built entirely on an attention economy. Let's pause on that mechanism for a second because it's vital.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Algorithms aren't maliciously programmed to make us angry. They're simply programmed to maximize engagement.
Right, it's just a metric.
And human neurobiology just happens to prioritize threat detection. So when an algorithm tests 100 posts, the one that triggers our us versus them survival instinct gets the most clicks.
We were essentially being hacked by a blind mathematical optimization.
Yes. We aren't naturally becoming more hateful.
No, our environment is artificially rewarding division because, well, outrage keeps you scrolling.
And all of this, the technology, the climate toll, the inequality, the fragmentation, it culminates in the fifth dimension, the ultimate paradox.
Human potential versus existential risk.
We are legitimately preparing to establish human colonies on Mars while simultaneously trying to manage, civilization-ending risks like unaligned AI and bioengineered pathogens.
That's a lot to hold in your head at once.
Okay, wait, I have to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
When you look back at history, didn't past leaps cause this exact same panic? Like, when the printing press was invented, European powers panicked because it disrupted their control over information.
Sure, massive upheaval.
Or look at the Industrial Revolution. Is this moment actually unique, or are we just experiencing the standard human reaction to change?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it's a fair comparison, but the scale and the speed fundamentally changed the nature of the event.
How so?
The printing press took decades to ripple across borders. The Industrial Revolution took over a century to reshape global labor.
Right.
Today, a supply chain shock in Taiwan or a new AI model deployed in California rewires the entire global economy in a matter of weeks.
Weeks, yeah, that's true.
We are sitting squarely on the hinge of history. We're the very first generation to watch both global progress and global crises unfold live, simultaneously on the exact same screen.
Which creates this bizarre emotional simultaneity. Like, you scroll your feed and see a miraculous breakthrough in fusion energy.
Right.
Followed instantly by footage of a catastrophic wildfire.
Yeah.
Followed by a new AI tool that might automate your entire industry. We feel intensely responsible for all of it, but completely powerless to steer any of it.
And that feeling of powerlessness is the defining feature of what researchers call the liminal century.
The liminal century.
Right. We are caught in the threshold moment. The old world is dying, and the new world hasn't fully formed yet.
We aren't rocketing straight up to utopia, and we aren't crashing into an apocalyptic wasteland.
No, we are simply muddling through in a chaotic spiral.
So what does this all mean? Like, if our brains are physically reacting to a digital threat on our phones as if it were a literal tiger in the room, how do we stop our nervous systems from constantly flooding with cortisol?
Because we are muddling through at Mach 3.
Exactly. And this brings up a concept from the source material that I absolutely love, village scale hardware.
Oh, yes. Let's break that down, because it explains so much of our daily exhaustion.
It really does.
Human physiology evolved over hundreds of thousands of years for slow-changing local environments.
Right.
Your brain is optimized to track the social standing of maybe 150 people in a local tribe, to respond to immediate physical threats, and then to rest once the threat is gone.
But today, that same hardware is trying to process the geopolitical anxieties of 8 billion people in real time.
It's impossible.
It's like trying to run a modern AI language model on a 1990s pocket calculator. The hardware physically cannot handle the processing load.
And the result is chronic burnout. Again, your nervous system isn't failing. It is accurately reporting that the environment has become unmanageable.
That is so validating to hear.
But the mismatch isn't just biological, it's systemic.
What do you mean?
Look at our global infrastructure, healthcare, supply chains, power grids. For the last 50 years, we optimized all of these systems for efficiency.
Okay.
We built just-in-time delivery networks that have zero slack.
Wait, so if a system has no slack, it can't absorb a shock?
That's the hidden danger of hyper-efficiency. In a stable world, efficiency is highly profitable.
Right.
In a turbulent world, it becomes incredibly fragile. When a global pandemic hits or a major shipping canal gets blocked, the entire efficient system seizes up because there's no backup inventory in the warehouse.
Wow. So our biology and our global infrastructure are both completely overwhelmed by the sheer amplitude of the turbulence.
Precisely.
Okay, but if we're flying through this level of turbulence and both our biological hardware and our societal infrastructure are overwhelmed, why haven't we been flung out of the sky?
Good question.
Like, what is actually holding this whole thing together?
That is where we have to look at what the text calls civilization's seatbelts.
Seatbelts.
Yeah, because despite the extreme volatility, the world hasn't snapped. We have a deeply layered web of safety mechanisms, starting right down at the neurobiological level.
This part blew my mind a bit. The research breaks down personal seatbelts, things like slow breathing, physical movement, and nature exposure.
Right.
And they don't frame this as just self-care or like a nice weekend hike. They frame it as literal regulatory technology for the human body.
Think about the mechanics of it. When you walk into a forest or sit by a body of water, you are removing the rapid-fire, high-contrast stimuli of screens in urban environments.
Yeah, the sensory overload.
Nature operates on a low-frequency, highly fractal visual pattern that physically signals safety to the amygdala. It biologically downregulates a nervous system that has been hijacked by global-scale inputs.
Oh.
You are literally resetting the hardware.
Which allows you to actually engage with the next layer of seatbelts, meaning-making, and micro-communities.
Right.
I want to pause on this idea of meaning-making because usually we dismiss mythic rituals or storytelling or deep philosophical frameworks as just escapism. Like we're telling ourselves stories to hide from reality.
Well, it's quite the opposite. Meaning-making isn't an escape hatch. It's the rebar inside the concrete of the human mind.
Yes. It's literal load-bearing architecture.
Exactly.
When you have a framework that gives your suffering or your efforts a context, it takes the sheer chaos of the world and organizes it into a structure you can survive inside of.
And then you add a micro-community to that, a small, trusted circle of people, and you have a real shock absorber for modern life.
And zooming out from the individual, we have social and cultural seatbelts too, right?
Yeah, we have shared norms. The invisible agreements like don't burn the commons or stop at a red light that keep society functioning even when we fundamentally disagree with our neighbors.
And culture is ballast. Art, humor, music, these aren't just entertainment?
No, they provide the emotional weight that keeps the social fabric from tearing apart during a crisis.
Plus the institutional seatbelts. The rule of law, public health networks, the internet backbone.
They might be creaky and in desperate need of an update, but they are the quiet machinery preventing a free fall.
But if we look at the ultimate safety strap, the meta seatbelt, the document calls it distributed resilience.
Oh, this is crucial.
Walk me through this because this feels like the core reason humanity survives its own mistakes.
Okay, so distributed resilience means we don't rely on a single point of failure.
Right.
Having thousands of different cultures, governance experiments, and economic models means that when one system catastrophically fails, another is already improvising a solution.
Like backup generators.
Exactly. If a centralized, monolithic society makes a fatal error, it's game over for everyone. But humanity is modular. Redundancy, the fact that we have backups for our backups in the form of diverse human societies, is what allows us to keep muddling through.
But knowing we are strapped in with all these complex seatbelts brings up a pretty terrifying question.
What's that?
If we are strapped into an accelerating, vibrating airplane, and we're relying on all these distributed systems to keep us safe, who is actually in the cockpit? Like, who is flying this thing?
The uncomfortable truth is everyone and no one.
Yikes.
Modern civilization isn't steered by a single hand on a yoke. It is a massively distributed, semi-autonomous aircraft.
Okay, break down the crew for us.
First, you have the autopilot. This represents economic inertia, demographic shifts, and technological acceleration.
The big macro forces.
Right. These forces have their own internal momentum and logic. They don't ask for permission.
Then you have the cockpit crew.
Right.
The presidents, the corporate leaders, the scientists, and regulators. But looking at the scope of these changes, it becomes glaringly obvious that they only have partial control.
Very partial.
No one has a view of the entire dashboard. Half the time, the regulators are trying to figure out how a technology works 5 years after it's already reshaped the global economy.
Meanwhile, down below the deck, you have the mechanics.
Who are they?
The nurses, the power grid operators, the sanitation workers, the farmers. They aren't setting the flight path, but they are the invisible stabilizers.
If they stop doing their jobs, the plane drops out of the sky in a matter of days.
Absolutely. And then there's the passengers.
The billions of us.
Right. But we aren't just sitting passively in our seats. Our collective behavior, our purchasing choices, our cultural shifts, we act like distributed control surfaces on the wings.
Millions of tiny, everyday adjustments create the airflow that shapes the trajectory of the flight.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because I struggle with the metaphors we use for this.
Also,
People often talk about this whole process as repairing a plane mid-flight.
yeah, you hear that a lot.
I have to say, remodeling a Boeing at 30,000 feet sounds like a spectacularly bad idea. You don't rip out an engine while you're cruising.
Fair point.
I much prefer another analogy from the text that captures this better. A cedar canoe in rough water.
Ah, yes.
You don't pull over to the side of the ocean to carve a new hull. You redistribute the weight, you patch the leaks as they happen, you adjust your paddle stroke, and you just keep moving.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that's a much more accurate framework, because it shifts us away from thinking of civilization as a rigid machine.
Right.
A plane is fragile. If one major component fails, the whole thing crashes. Civilization behaves much more like a living organism. Think of a coral reef or an old-growth forest.
Right. Living systems are constantly dying and regenerating at the exact same time.
Exactly. They evolve in motion, they are modular, they shed dead wood and grow new canopies simultaneously.
So you have to fix it while it's moving.
Yes. Refusing to repair our societal systems while they are moving isn't playing it safe. It is actually the most reckless choice possible. If a living organism doesn't adapt dynamically to a changing environment, the turbulence will eventually tear it apart.
So if we look at this incredibly complex living reef canoe hybrid thing, we have to look at the actual people making these mid-flight repairs during this liminal century.
Right.
The research maps out 3 distinct roles people are playing right now. First, you have the repair crew.
The repair crew is small but mighty. These are the individuals quietly doing the structural work.
Like the engineers building renewable energy microgrids.
Yes, or the teachers cultivating cognitive resilience in the next generation, or the community organizers. They aren't usually making headlines, but they are actively reinforcing the struts of society.
Then you have the saboteurs. And we need to be really clear and impartial about the mechanism here.
Very important.
These are not cartoon villains sitting in a lair plotting the downfall of humanity. Whether they are political figures, media conglomerates, or corporate entities, they are simply following incredibly strong incentives.
Sabotage is structurally incentivized. It is vastly more profitable in the short term to extract resources than to regenerate them.
Right.
It is much easier to gain political power by polarizing a population than by doing the hard work of unifying them.
So saboteurs are simply individuals or systems prioritizing short-term extraction over long-term stability.
Exactly. And finally, you have the passengers.
This is the vast majority of people.
Most of us.
Yeah, most of us are not actively repairing the foundational systems of the world, and we aren't actively sabotaging them. We are just overwhelmed.
People are exhausted. They're trying to afford groceries, trying to raise kids, and defaulting to whatever digital distraction is available just to survive the week.
It's a bandwidth issue, not a moral failing.
Completely.
But here's what I don't get. If the saboteurs are so loud and their behavior is heavily rewarded by our economic algorithms, and they can do so much damage so quickly, why hasn't the plane crashed? Like, how are the repairers possibly keeping up?
This raises an important question, and it's because these roles aren't fixed identities.
Okay.
They are entirely fluid states of being. A dedicated repairer who burns out and loses hope becomes an exhausted passenger.
Oh, wow.
A stressed passenger, driven into a corner by economic scarcity or fear, might adopt the behaviors of a saboteur just to survive.
But it swings the other way, too, right?
It does. A saboteur can shift gears when the incentives in their environment change, and a passenger can wake up tomorrow, realize they have a bit of excess bandwidth, and decide to start repairing their local community.
So the plane stays in the air because the net effect of the repairs still outpaces the sabotage.
Just barely.
Just barely.
There is a beautiful piece of imagery in the research about a rain-soaked cedar longhouse during a massive, violent storm.
Tell me about that.
Well, some people were frantically patching the roof to keep the rain out. Some people are thoughtlessly tracking mud inside. But the vast majority of people are just huddled around the fire, waiting for the storm to pass.
Right.
The structure stands because, ultimately, just enough hands are tending to it.
That completely shifts the perspective. Like, it removes the paralyzing panic of feeling like you personally have to fix the entire world.
Exactly.
But it also strips away the excuse to just give up and do nothing. You just have to be one of the hands tending the structure when you have the capacity to do so.
Beautifully said.
Okay, to bring this all together for you listening, we are navigating a terrifying paradox of extremes. The technological and economic highs are unimaginably potent, and the systemic lows are uniquely perilous.
But you are not unequipped for this. The feelings of overwhelm you experience are a perfectly natural biological response to processing planet-scale changes with village-scale hardware.
It's so important to remember that.
The key is remembering that you possess the exact cultural and biological technology, the breadth, the community, the meaning-making rebar required to navigate it.
We started this deep dive talking about how much we crave a neat historical narrative. Like, we want to know if we are in a golden age or a dark age, but we are getting both at the exact same time.
Yeah, the ultimate paradox.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. If human civilization is truly a living system that has no choice but to evolve mid-flight, what if the exhaustion, the turbulence, and the whiplash we are all feeling right now aren't the warning signs of an impending crash?
Right.
What if, instead, they are the necessary, agonizing, growing pains of a species that is finally learning to co-pilot its own evolution?
That's a powerful way to look at it.
Look at your own life this week. Which module of the plane are you standing in right now? And today, are you repairing, are you sabotaging, or are you just looking out the window? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.